Hi there. In this After Effects lesson, I'll show you the techniques you need to learn to create these kinds of animations. So, if you enjoy motion graphics and want to apply these techniques to your own projects, stick around and watch the tutorial until the end, because I'm going to explain everything step by step. By the way, if you want to support the channel, in addition to your likes, you can also do it from my Patreon page. There, I share with you all the projects I use in the tutorials, so you can keep practicing and learning. I leave the link in the description if you want to take a look. The first thing we'll do is import all the files. To keep the project well organized from the start, we'll open the order script by our friend Vane, which, with just one click, organizes the entire project into folders. I'll leave the link in the description if you want to download it completely free. By the way, if you like documentary-style editing, my course is now available. But it's not just a course in which I show you how to animate a sequence in After Effects and that's it, but I show you the entire procedure that I followed to create this animation. From the initial idea to the final render, going through each and every phase of the creative process. I'll leave the link in the description in case you want to take a look. This composition will be called Animation, 1920 by 1920 pixels, 30 frames per second, and a duration of 30 seconds is more than enough. With the rectangle tool, we'll create a shape like this, which will serve as the background. We need to convert it to 3D. If you don't see the cube icon, press F4. We'll center the anchor point and center it in the viewport. And instead of a solid color, we'll use a gradient. We'll position the handles like this and also edit the gradient. If you only see two colors, you can add another by clicking here. This is black. This is red. And here I'm going to add the following code. To create the parallax effect between the different elements of the composition, we need to position them at different depths on the Z-axis. I'm going to move the background layer back 2000 pixels. And as I always do, I'm going to set the exact size values. We'll disable the string and enter 7720 here and 9400 here. We're also going to move it slightly up on the Y-axis. Right-clicking, we'll create a 50mm camera with one node. We'll also create a null object, convert it to 3D, and parent the camera to it. Before starting the animation, we're going to position all the elements of this first scene. We'll bring in the sky file, convert it to 3D, and set its depth on the Z-axis to the same as the background layer. We'll adjust the scale a bit and move it up on the Y-axis. To blend it better with the background, you can experiment with the different blending modes. I'm going to leave it on soft light. It looks a little dark now, but we'll make some adjustments to the gradient later to make it look better. With the layer selected, we'll create a mask like this and increase the feathering so the edges aren't so sharp. Let's continue. We'll bring in this grass texture, convert it to 3D, and rotate it 90 degrees on the X-axis. We'll set the scale to 65% and move it down a bit. I'm going to use a value of 1830. We'll bring in this other image. Convert it to 3D, adjust the scale, and position it. Notice, the layers are already interacting with each other. We'll leave it positioned around there. We'll also move it 800 pixels towards the background. We'll place this copy we made closer to the camera, so the parallax effect between the different elements will be more noticeable. We'll duplicate this layer and move it to the right. Take your time until you're happy with the composition of your scene. Now, with both layers selected, we'll bring in this one called Tombstone 2, and with the Alt key pressed, we'll replace them. We'll place this character layer up here, convert it to 3D, adjust its scale, and position it. We'll do the same with the tree layers. Convert it to 3D. We're going to put this layer in the foreground, so we'll move it a little closer to the camera. We'll also move it slightly to the right and adjust its scale. Now we duplicate it, and we'll place this copy on the left side, but we'll give it a different value on the z-axis. We'll leave it at -1000. And with the layer selected, we'll replace it with the one from the other tree. Remember to hold down the Alt key to replace one layer with another. We've designed the first scene. Now we can start with the camera animation. At the beginning of the timeline, we mark one keyframe for position and another for Z rotation. We advance to the 3-second mark. Here, we set the rotation to 180 degrees, and we're going to move the entire scene upwards on the y-axis. To better see what we're doing, we activate two views. We put this viewfinder in the left view. Notice the movement the camera makes? We set it to -4090 on the y-axis. We smooth these two keyframes. Now, at this point, we're going to design the next scene. But first, I'm going to change the color of all these. We start with the storm layer, converting it to 3D and centering it in the viewport. We also adjust its rotation. We need to position it at the same depth as the background layer, so we set the Z-axis to 2000 pixels and increase its scale slightly. To prevent the empty space between the two sky layers from showing, we'll hold down the Control key to keep them aligned. We change the blending mode to Overlay. We make a copy and rename it Storm Matte. Let's bring in this other image of the creature, convert it to 3D, and center it in the viewport. We'll adjust its rotation and move it back 2000 pixels. We'll set its scale to 200 and also move it slightly up on the Y-axis. Okay, we'll apply a fill effect to this layer, using a color that matches our scene. We'll change the blending mode to Soft Light. And we'll also create a mask to soften the bottom part a bit. So it blends better with the background. What I want to do now is make this creature visible only when the lightning strikes, so we'll apply a couple of effects to this layer. First, the one called Tint. And now we'll apply the one called Extract. Notice that by moving these handles, we're extracting or removing the darker parts of this footage, leaving only the brighter or luminous parts, in this case, the lightning. Here we'll set a value of 220, and to make the extraction much smoother, we'll set a value of 72 here. Now we simply make the creature layer, the alpha matte of the storm layer, and that's how we achieve this cool effect. Let's continue designing the scene. We'll bring in the character image, convert it to 3D, center it in the viewport, rotate it 180 degrees, scale it down a bit, and position it here at the base of the composition. This one looks fantastic. Now we bring in this layer and repeat the process. To make the parallax effect more noticeable, we'll set it to a different depth on the z-axis, giving it a value of 1000. To complete this part down here, we'll create a rectangle with a solid color. If you want to use the same color as me, here's the code. We'll rename this layer Base and convert it to 3D. Look here where we have the pine trees, and here's the rectangle we just made. To put it in the same position, we pull the pick whip while holding down the Control and Shift keys. Now we parent it to the pine tree layer, and that's it. We just need to move it up a little on the Y-axis. We apply a fill effect to the pine tree layer, and with the eyedropper tool, we select the same color. Look, here in the transition, you can see the edges of this layer. To fix this, we're going to edit the background gradient. By moving this little square, we can change the location of the black color. We also move this a little to the left, so the sky looks a bit bluer. There it is. Now we can continue with the animation. To make the camera movement look much smoother, I'm going to use the 3 keyframe technique. At this point, I'm going to move forward 10 frames, and I'm going to place these keyframes right here. Now I'm going to move backward 10 frames and mark 2 new ones. I'm going to place these 2 at 525. We smooth them all again, select the ones for the position, and go into the graphics editor to add some flow. We need to activate the continuous option, because otherwise, we'll have to move the handles separately and won't be as precise. So, we double-click and activate it. Here, we set the influence to 75%, and we move this handle slightly upward. We set the influence to 70% for this one. This way, instead of the camera stopping when it reaches this point, it will continue moving, but very slowly, and will achieve incredibly smooth movements. We do the same with the rotation curve. We activate the continuous option, set the influence to 75, and then set this one to 70%. Now we move this handle slightly upwards. We have to be a bit more careful with the rotation curve, because if we go too far, it can cross the 0 line and create a kind of bounce, which we don't want. So, to avoid this, we shouldn't exceed 180 degrees. If this technique seems too complicated, just use 2 keyframes and you're done. Look, now we're not exceeding 180 degrees. Let's preview what we've done so far. This looks great, but to prevent the creature from appearing too early in the transition, I'm going to move these two storm layers slightly to the right. Now it's perfect. We now advance to the 8-second mark and mark 2 keyframes there to maintain the same position. At the 11-second mark, we'll set a 360-degree rotation for a complete loop. And we'll also move the entire scene upwards, so we'll set the y-axis to 960. This way, the camera will end up in the same position as at the beginning, and the loop will look perfect. Although, we still need to make some adjustments. We'll smooth the keyframes and move forward 10 frames. We'll place these 2 here. Now, we'll move backward 10 frames. We'll mark 2 new ones. We'll place these 2 keyframes below 1325. We'll smooth them again, and to differentiate them from the keyframes of the first movement, we can change their color. We'll do exactly the same with this animation curve. We'll activate the continuous option and set the influence to 75%. We'll move this handle slightly upwards. We'll set its influence to 70%. With the rotation set the same, we activate the checkbox, change the influence of the handles, and move this one slightly upwards, being careful not to overdo it. Notice that we never exceed 360 degrees. We set the influence to 70%. To have more leeway and better close the loop, we're going to make another movement. At the 16-second mark, we selected 2 keyframes to maintain the position. But to avoid repeating the same process, at this point, we select all the keyframes from the first movement, copy them, and paste them. But here in this section, we need to make a small adjustment to maintain the position. So we select these 3 keyframes from the rotation and enter the graphics editor. It's very important to have all 3 selected. Now, we're going to set a value of 360 degrees. This way, the rotation value will be maintained between these 2 keyframes, and we'll have an extra movement to close our animated loop. We make a copy of the composition called Animation, and this one will be called Animation Loop. We go in and continue working on this composition. We go here to the highest point of the animation and press the B key. Now we go to this other point, press the N key, adjust the workspace there, and check that the loop works correctly. Well, the movement is fine, but we need to make some adjustments to the layers to make it perfect. We go to the 8-second mark, and this sky layer, we set it to start right here. Now we go to the end and cut this layer here. Now we're going to put this part, we cut right at the beginning, so the animation will start the same way it ended. We'll keep only these 2 layers to check. Okay, it works perfectly there. With these storm layers, we're going to do the same thing. From here at the beginning, we cut them. We put these 2 above and move them right to the end, so the animation ends the same way it began. Now we have a small problem. The creature with the lightning isn't visible, but we can easily fix this. We select the layer and make it the alpha matte of this other layer. Great. Now everything is working correctly. Let's add an extra movement to the animation. We go back to the last keyframes, duplicate the null, and delete all of them. We parent the previous null to the new one, and then we go back to the beginning and mark a new keyframe at the position. Now we move forward to this other peak and zoom in a little. Setting a value of 300 on the z-axis, for example. Now, right here at the end, we copy and paste the first keyframe. This way, in addition to the transition between the 2 scenes, we'll add a bit of zoom, which will give the animation much more dynamism. It can still be improved. I'm going to go to the reference website and copy this expression. We duplicate this composition again, and the copy will be called Animation Wiggle. We open it, and with a right click on this bar, we'll cut the workspace there. Now, with the Alt key pressed, we'll click on the camera orientation and paste the expression. This expression will generate a more organic and random effect in our animation, and also in a loop, so it will repeat as long as we want without any cuts or strange jumps. Obviously, this value is very high, so we'll lower the frequency and amplitude to relax it a bit. There, it looks perfect. The next thing we're going to do is create some floating particles to make it look even more epic. In the original animation, I used the particular plugin, but, as in this case, we're going to do everything with native After Effects tools. We'll apply the CC particle world effect to this solid and make some adjustments. I only want these particles in this scene, so we're going to move them down the y-axis until we see them appear. I'll leave them more or less here. In the physics section, we're going to change from explosive to vortex, and we're going to lower the speed quite a bit. It looks like the character is breathing fire. In this part of the tutorial, I recommend that you experiment with this effect and see what each parameter does. A good way to find out is by increasing the values a lot. It will look better that way, but you can copy the same configuration if you want. Once we've finished configuring the particles, we're going to select all the layers and activate motion blur. This will make it look much more natural. Well, it's not necessary for the null layers. We're going to duplicate the character layer to highlight the highlights, and we're going to apply the same effects to this copy that we applied to the storm video, the ones called tint and extract. Now, we move these handles until we're left with only the highlights and bright areas of the image. To emphasize them, you can use the default glow effect in After Effects. This time I'm going to use the Deep Glow plugin, and I'm going to set this layer's blending mode to Screen. Look at the before and after. Wow, this looks incredible. To soften the edges of this layer, with it selected, we're going to double-click on the rectangle tool to create a mask, and we're going to increase the feathering so it blends better with the background. We can still achieve a more cinematic finish. We're going to apply the Fast Box Blur effect to these tree layers to create some depth. We could also do this by enabling the camera's depth of field, but this effect will look fantastic. Okay, we need to add these effects to the wiggle animation composition. Since we duplicated this composition before applying the effects, they aren't reflected here. So, we go into this composition, copy them, and paste them to their respective layers. We do the same with the mask, copy it, and paste it onto the grass layer of this composition. And now, we're done. Our animation is finished and ready to share on social media. I know this tutorial has been a bit long, and if you're just starting out in this wonderful world of motion graphics, you might find it a little confusing to follow all the steps. So if you have any questions or there's anything you didn't understand, leave a comment and I'll be happy to help in any way I can. By the way, and if you liked the tutorial, give it a thumbs up so I know. See you in the next video.